Hey guys, Jeff Beers here. Have this new product available from Freelance Fab. Can't wait to check it out. Heck yeah. All right, so right here we have a new product. It is the Freelance Fab 2006 Tundra rear driveshaft upgrade. This one has some significant advantages to it. Big ones considering that it has a 1350 U-joints, which are just super beef. Major upgrade right there. The other thing is too, you'll see that this no longer has a double cardan CV joint, which is a common issue on these rear drive shafts. Over a long period of time, those things can wear out, and when you go to replace them, you have to basically cut off a section of your rear drive shaft and weld on a new one, because those CV, the cardan joints, double cardan joints, are not considered serviceable. So this one basically converts it to a 1350 U-joint. One of the significant advantages to this rear drive shaft is the carrier bearing, which is just straight up massive. Much bigger bearing. Also, it's reduced amount of rubber inside of here, which is actually good because it's not as it's more of a rigid setup than the other one where it's kind of more of a pillow. This one definitely has less give than the factory one does, which should definitely add to the strength and less movement under high load, high torque situations when you're accelerating or giving it lots of throttle and stuff like that. So that's pretty cool. One thing that I really like about this drive shaft is that it just seems like it's just super high quality. Seems very well built. Everything seems very well thought out. I do like this right here, which is over the splines. It's like a little dust cap protector to help keep the grease in, which is super awesome. But yeah, can't wait to get this thing installed and put up into my Tundra. Okay, we are now ready to replace the rear driveline. Gonna start popping some screws out. Gonna first undo the rear section from the double cardan joint to the rear drive shaft. And then I'll do from the carrier bearing to the T-case after that. But before I do, what I did was I wanted to have my vehicle in neutral. On these ones with the shifter on the steering column, what I find is actually easier is you just undo the shift linkage right here to the transmission. Undo it right there and move that shift lever right over to neutral. That way you don't have to have your key on when it's in neutral. Much easier to get to the bolts. All right, we have the rear portion of the rear drive shaft out with the slip yoke right there, and then over here we have the double cardan joint, which can be the problematic portion for this rear drive shaft. Big reason being is the way that this was installed onto this axle tube is that it was a friction weld. Most drive shaft companies don't have the ability to do a friction weld, so a lot of times they'll have to cut off a section here, because if they want to replace this unit, you have to cut it off and then cut down on a section of the tube and weld an adapter in between to go from this point to that point, because they're dissimilar items. It's hard to go from a friction weld to a normal weld connection point. So that's one of the reasons why this rear drive shaft is a little bit more problematic to rebuild if you want to replace this double cardan joint. Okay, now we have the rear section portions side by side with the old versus new. You can definitely tell the shininess is way different, but the biggest difference here is the U-joints. We're deleting the double cardan and just going to a regular U-joint style. Slip yoke right here versus the slip yoke towards the rear on the old style. But really, just look at the difference here. This is a huge size difference. This is just massive, just big old flange on the back. That thing is just huge, dude. So that'll be major upgrade running this thing right here. So that'll be sweet. Oh, also too, it has indexing marks. So that way, if you do have your slip yoke come apart, you know where to put it back, which is pretty nifty. Okay, here is the big reason why we want to replace these things. I have had to put on 3 new carrier bearings on this truck in its life, all OEM parts, and you can see just so much movement. Still, This is kind of considered okay, but there is a lot of movement there, for sure. Okay, now we have these upper, or the most forward portions, side by side. You can see the difference in the carrier bearings here. Here's the factory one, and here's the upgraded one. The first thing you'll notice is that the diameter of this is much larger. This one has the pillow bearing, which you can kind of just wiggle and move by hand. This one, you like almost cannot. That is so rigid, but there is rubber dampeners in there, so it will reduce vibrations. Another thing to notice, look at the thickness on the splines of that. That's about, I don't know, the size of a nickel. And you come over here, and it's way freaking bigger. The splines on this are just freaking massive. And we'll come back down to the rear of the drive shaft. Once again, 1350 U-joints. Huge beefy boys. This one is just so much smaller, and this one is just big old heavy duty, which I freaking love. Now, on to the next step. With this carrier bearing being larger, the bolt pattern does fit, but the housing is larger. So we do need to modify the truck to make sure that it will fit, which is pretty easy. So I've already gone in and took out the lines that I want to cut out. We're just going to kind of cut it at an angle, trying to not go too crazy, because this threaded portion inside of here is welded, and we don't want to cut off the welds of those threads. So we're just going to stay inside that mark there and only take off as much as needed, and then that should give us enough clearance. And we're going to do a test fit just to make sure, but this will be the initial stage right there. All right, we got it all cut up. We took a grinding wheel to it and just shaved off a few millimeters on each side. As per instructions, 6 millimeters is the spec. I went a little bit less than that, by a couple millimeters, did a test fit, and it seems to fit good. Finish it off with a flapper wheel to kind of smooth off the edges. Now that we have the point for the carrier bearing all cut and modified so it's ready to fit, we need to prep our mounting surfaces. I usually, at least minimum, you want to prep these, remove any rust or corrosion that could be on the mounting flanges of the pinion flange, of the rear diff, and on the T-case. All right, now we have the front portion all installed. Everything's looking good, mounts right up. Carrier bearing is just super beef. You try to move this thing, oh man, there is way less give there. This is just a monster freaking carrier bearing right here. I can't even like barely even move it if I try. Oh yeah, that's awesome. Heck yeah. Okay, one thing that we have here added is rear driveline spacers. This is for the carrier bearing. These are pretty awesome. They come in 2 different sizes, and it comes with a bunch of pieces, so it allows you to fine tune the rear carrier bearing height just in case you need to correct any issues. So that's pretty sweet. Okay, now we have the rear portion installed, all set and ready to go. Got this U-joint all bolted up with all the caps in there and torqued to spec. Carrier bearings all looking good. Slip yoke looks fantastic. Bolts right up to the rear mounting flange on the pinion. Torqued all that to factory spec. And she's looking fantastic. It's now time to go for a test drive. Boop. And it is crazy how much less movement this thing has compared to the factory carrier bearing. This thing is just miles different. It is so crazy. Definitely think this is a step in the right direction. Mucho beefo, for sure. Hey guys, Jeff Beers here. So, had a chance to operate the rear drive shaft kit from Freelance Fab. Super awesome that those guys are able to bring this new product to the market, which is awesome. Full torque drive shafts and Freelance Fab with the 1350 U-joints. Super awesome kit. It's pretty cool that they're able to do this. So definitely check it out. It's a sweet setup for sure.